All right, everybody. Welcome to the Barn Burner Breakdown. I'm your host, Fred Sibeli. I have a very special guest today. He is the matchmaker for Combat FC. He's so gracious to give me a little bit of time to talk about an upcoming card in, I believe, February 9th. Please welcome to the show, Rick from Combat FC.
How's it going?
Good, Rick. It's so nice to have you here, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Very special guest, huh? I mean, now you've got to be good.
Dude, I like the, what is that, the Aurora Borealis in the background? That's cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I was going through my virtual backgrounds and everything else I have is like an office background I use for work or something. It's like, so it's either this or the Golden Gate Bridge. So I figured,
I like it. Good choice.
Yeah, thank you.
And I appreciate too, sort of like last minute hopping on today. It was great. I had a comic coming on today that I had to cancel. They had something that came up, so this worked out perfect, man. And much appreciated. We had the pleasure also talking to your partner in crime, Joe, a couple weeks ago, and just talking about the fight cards. I know I'm super excited about it, and I've been following you guys on Instagram and seeing the matchups and stuff like that. So, like, how does one transition to become a matchmaker for combat sports?
I don't know. You kind of trip and fall into it typically.
Yeah.
I mean, I met Joe years ago. So, I mean, I had a local website that covered a lot of the fights. And, I was just always around. I was pretty involved. So, made some relationships with some people and kind of developed some friendships. And Joe was managing a whole bunch of fighters. And, he's one thing that he does well is he kind of collects smart people. So he doesn't really know how to do much. I love the guy, but he's not good at Excel, right? He's not organized. He has good ideas sometimes, I would say the thing that Joe does better than anybody is he just collects smart people. He's the best networker I've ever seen in my life. And, he's a personable guy that's fun to be around. It's anybody that's ever met him is they see him, he walks in the room, it's Joe Cam, he's a fun hang, right? So, I just met him years ago at the fights. We hung out a handful of times, and then he decided he was going to start putting on MMA shows, and he initially hired someone else to be a matchmaker, and it wasn't really going well. And he was just kind of complaining to me one day about, hey, it's, I can't, we're struggling to get any big fights booked, and I'm not going to say the name of the guy that was struggling, but it was he's having a hard time getting the big fights that we want, and I was like, oh, have you I said, well, have you thought about booking? I don't even remember what the fight was. And he's like, oh, do you think they'd take that? And I said, yeah, I don't see why both guys wouldn't be into that fight, and and I just, you want me to text them? And he said, yeah, if you think you can get to him, and I'm like, what do you mean? Do you think yeah, I talk to all people. I go to all the fights, buddies with a lot of these guys, and I sent a few text messages, and within half an hour or so, I booked a couple fights for him, and he was just like, do you want to just do it? We're like 10 weeks out, 12 weeks out, whatever. The other guy doesn't have anything booked yet. Do you want to just do the whole thing?
Hell yeah.
I was like, oh, fuck it, why not? So just kind of fell into it, and then we just kind of went from there. And I mean, I think it helps, not to toot my own horn, but I'm kind of a smart guy. I've got a grown up job, and I'm pretty good with the business side of things. So I think that's something that's allowed us to be successful.
Yeah.
Is it not, I've seen some other first time shows kind of pop up and fail because they book a whole bunch of fights that they think everybody's going to go crazy for. But the like the market of people who follow local MMA enough to truly understand how good a card is actually pretty small. So you can't. It's not just about booking the best fights and slapping it together and hoping people show up. You got to book the right fights. And it's kind of a balancing act because you got to book. You got to book the popular guys, but you also got to book good fights.
Yeah.
You also have to get people in the venue from kind of from different buckets. I've had this conversation with other people. Like there's the buckets, or the people that buy tickets from fighters, and then another bucket is people that follow the sport locally, and people that have attended your shows in the past, and then there's everybody else. Someone that doesn't know a fighter on the card, that's never been to one of your events, and most of the promoters just ignore those people entirely because it's hard as hell to get them in the door.
Yeah.
Well, every time you get someone from that bucket in the door, well, now they're in the bucket of people that's been at your last show or that have been to your shows, so there's different ways to advertise to each bucket. And the more people you get through the door, the easier it is to continue to grow the brand. And I think that's something that we've done a good job of, and I think if you look at some of the other local shows, there are some of them that have been around a long time and they've had events in the last, since we've been back. There's been some promoters that have had shows that did 500 or 600 people, which is bananas to me.
Yeah.
In some cases, 500 or 600 is being generous. Like I've been to some of these events and it looked like there was maybe 400 to 500 people. And the worst event we've had since we've been back was probably 1,500 people.
Yeah.
So I think the approach that we take is, it's working, and it's not just because we're on Fight Pass. That certainly helps. I think that helps with the guys that are willing to fight for us, and it helps getting guys booked. But there's been other people on Fight Pass that have had trouble getting people in the door. So I don't know. I think that's one thing that me and Joe do pretty well is I don't know. I always hate it when guys talk about oh, I understand business, and I think those people sound like assholes. But I don't know. I think we've both been in different types of businesses, in different types of roles that we do kind of understand the whole picture, and so we've done a pretty good job of packing the venue, and I think that's I think the bigger the shows get, the easier it is to get people through the door. Like when you're someone that buys tickets to an event, if you walk in and you're one of 400 people and the venue's 3/4 empty, it's even if it's an exciting night of fights, you come away from it thinking
they don't know what they're doing or something. Yeah.
Yeah. It just doesn't seem as fun,
Yeah.
I don't know if I see that you're, is that a Deftones shirt you're wearing, right? It's
yeah, Deftones. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so assuming you're a music guy, right? If you go to a concert and there's a tiny amount of people and the venue's half full, oftentimes you won't come away from it thinking that it was a very good show, right? But then if you're in there and it's packed and everybody's going fucking crazy, and every time these guys have a show, the place sells out, and I better buy my tickets early if I don't want to be sitting in the back. It's it sounds kind of weird, but the more people that you have in there, and when you get, when the place is full of energy and everybody's going crazy, the crowd going nuts for a big knockout, it adds to the whole experience, So it's crazy to think about, but the more people you have there, the easier it is to pack the house next time, because everybody that went had a good time instead of, getting the golf clap when there's a knockout.
I get that, man. I was telling Joe before too. I'm a stand-up comedian as well, and I book comedy shows, and it's the same thing. Right now we have shows at a local brewery. Me and my partner for that venture, Max, who's another comedian, Max Schultz, and it's the same thing. It's that fight to get people in. But once you can start to get it in, it's just two people, and then two new people might bring two more new people, and the more full the room is, the bigger the laughs are, the more people want to come back, and It's tough. It's not. It's like the hardest thing. It's not easy, but once you get it figured out, it's the best. There's nothing like a packed house. And you guys have such a good production value, and like just like the no, I don't know if you would call it a jumbotron, but like the jumbotron thing you guys have, like that adds so much to the show, man.
It does, and like just the visuals of seeing the guys walk out in front of it.
Yeah,
Like you've got their picture and you've got their name on it. Like it's a cool walkout, like it definitely adds to it. And and that's a big part of it too, because like the MMA market is saturated. Like just about every weekend. I mean, you can definitely see fights every weekend, but most of the time you can see UFC fights or, Bellator or PF, any of these other big shows. I mean, Fight Pass has shows every weekend. So like the MMA market is saturated.
Yeah.
So just watching people punch each other in the face, like the novelty of that is worn off. So you really need to, like, you need something more than that. Like putting on fights that end up being exciting. That's part of it. Like that's, you have to do that. Like if your fights suck, then nobody's going to want to show up, but that's not enough. You need to do the other things, and having the production value, having the good lighting, having, the right sound system, that stuff does add to it. And again, if you have a packed house and, people are going crazy, it definitely helps, when the popular fighters, the guys that sell 1 million tickets, when they come out and the crowd's going nuts, like,
yeah.
my parents go to every show, and my parents are, they're pretty young for, to have a son that's in his early 40s. Right. But they still go to every show. And my dad's a UFC fan and all that. And like the guys that he remembers are typically, if someone has like a crazy finish or a crazy moment, like, like they'll remember Jerry Muse talking about like he did a crazy post-fight interview talking about like, I don't pull out of fights. Ask my wife. I don't pull, I got 3 kids. I don't pull out of nothing. And like, so my dad will remember that. And like, who was that crazy asshole that, that says he doesn't pull out of nothing, right? But outside of that, he remembers the guys that, like, if someone has a big crowd and they're going nuts when they walk out, and then that guy gets a big win, and then he's on the cage flexing, like, they'll remember the moments where everybody's going fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the type of stuff that, like, when you have a really good atmosphere, it's easier to get people back.
Absolutely.
We've had, years ago, I distinctly remember we had a show in which a kid got dropped on his head, and there was a long break of, when he left in an ambulance, and we had to wait till the ambulance came back, and there was like a 45-minute break.
Wow.
Between fights because we had to wait for the ambulance to come back. Like, it sucked the energy out of the room.
Yeah.
And then next event, like, you could see the crowd was meaningfully smaller.
Yeah.
Like, there were some people who they might have been first-time fans, or they might have been people that had been to a handful of fights, and you have that one shitty experience where it's just like not that fun of a night, and then it's I don't feel like spending the money this time. Let's skip this next one. And it took a little bit to get it kind of built back up again. So I don't know how I get on this tangent, but yeah,
no, it's cool. On an event basis, how often are you guys tweaking the production? I mean, because I've been to 2 events so far, and both have been awesome. Like, but aside from what, I see as a fan, I know there's all kinds of things I don't see, or, things that are going on either backstage or with, like you said, lighting, cameras, jumbotron. How often are you guys making adjustments?
Typically every fight. And in some cases we're making adjustments on the fly. And part of it too is like, we hadn't done a show for a long time. So we forgot about how we did a lot of stuff. So like, our first fight back, like the way that it used to work is like we were able to light up the locker rooms and it didn't impact the front of the house. But I don't know what changed, but we can no longer light it up the way that we used to.
Yeah.
So either there's way too many lights on that it screws up our production, like it literally like messes with our whole TV lighting, or there's no lights on in the back at all. So we had guys with their like coaches had their cell phone camera, like their cell phone flashlights out, and that's how they were wrapping hands. And guys were warming up like with cell phone cameras for light. And like I walked back there and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Like, why is it pitch black back here? And they were like, oh, they kind of walked me through what was going on with the house lights. And it's like, and then you got to grab the people that, I mean, it's mostly me and Joe who do. I mean, there's some other people that help. His sister's phenomenal. There's a handful of other people that help out with things. I mean, my buddy Tom is great. But they help out a lot in, on weigh-in day, fight day, but like in the leading up to it, it's mostly me and Joe. I mean, there's some people that do help, but like we're doing the lion's share of the work leading up to the event. And again, I don't want to piss anybody off that does help us. We have other people that help. I'm not saying it's, but in terms of like someone who's going to catch.
In terms of making decisions, it's you guys making it happen.
Right. Someone that would catch the locker room thing, like it's me or Joe. And, and the other people, there's a bunch of people that work for us on fight day that aren't like, they just kind of show up to do security or they show up to help with something else. And like, I'm like, how did no one tell me this? This should have been something that like 30 seconds in, like someone should have said, okay, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Can someone go ask Rick what we're supposed to do here? And, so that's, we ended up, immediately, we had our production team set up some lights so that people could actually see. But then next time we had to make sure, okay, what are we going to do for, how are we going to make sure that this lighting is better back here and that it's not a mess? And, there was some other, like we had I think we're probably not going to use the boom this time.
Yeah.
I like it for some of the shots that we can get with it.
You mean like above the ring you're talking about?
Yeah. So that big jump. So like, but it's like the size of a fucking picnic table.
Yeah.
Right? Like on the floor. So we've got this massive section of what would be the best seats in the house that are taken up by something that's the size of a picnic table. And we've got somebody there operating it, So it's like, all right, we can probably forego that and open up some more seating in that part of the arena. And, there's been some other things that we've had to tweak with the DJ or with, another thing we did with the speakers last time. The first few shows, the speakers were on the floor.
Yeah.
So if you had a seat that was over there, like all the sound that's filling up the entire venue is coming out of speakers that are 30 feet behind you. So that's pretty loud, so that, their experience
gonna get blasted
was probably not what they were hoping for. And so, I mean, those are things that you don't even think about until we're in the venue, and until we see it. And then we're like, okay, this doesn't really work that well. And, we ended up hanging the speakers from the ceiling, and that made a huge difference last time. It was just so much better. It opened up some more space, and it also wasn't so loud. And again, we've kind of tweaked the type of lighting a little bit. But I don't know. That's not something that I even notice. Like we had an issue with, I don't know, like a breaker blue or something like that. One of the fights, and half the lights were off.
Oh man. But you didn't notice.
If you can go, like pull up our TV footage from all of our Fight Pass fights, if you can tell me which one was missing half the lighting, I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
So it's, and again, when that happened, I'm like, well, shit, can we just not rent those lights then?
Yeah, right.
Like everything was fine without them.
It's like a good accident to have, I guess, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, the short answer to your question about when we tweak things, it's like, yeah, we tweak things every fight. We've had, again, a lot of it is we don't know something's going to be a problem until it is.
Yeah.
Like I think it was the first event or the second event. One of the early ones. The place was packed, and we had like one or two people scanning in tickets on the way in, and the line was just wrapped around. And it's like, okay, we got to get, for next time we need 4 people up here. We need to have way more people scanning tickets to get people through the door. And the beer line was like a mile long.
That might have been the one I went to. It was like a super long beer line. I think I've been to two. The first one I went to, the beer line was like really long.
And like, and we don't get paid on any of that, right? Like they don't give us a
Yeah.
bonus on how much we sell or anything. So we're just trying to get it. We want it to be a good experience.
You want the people to just lose their mind, really. You know what I mean? With like having a great night.
We want everyone to have a good time. We don't want people to come out of the venue saying, yeah, it was a really cool night, but that beer line sucked.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to have a but this part sucked.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we do that there's probably one other promoter in the area that's as obsessed with it as we are. Because I see a lot of the shows where they want it to be a decent show, but I don't think that like based on what I'm seeing at the events, they're not obsessed.
Yeah.
Like we're one of the only promoters that's obsessed with trying to do like we just want everything soup to nuts to be perfect, and it's it's impossible. We'll never get it perfect, but we continue to try to improve that experience and make sure that people know when they come to a Combat FC show that they're gonna have a good time.
Yeah.
They're gonna get their money.
Yeah, right. Because it's not about nothing's going to be perfect, but that's like the perfect attitude to have about it. That's the perfect frame of mind to be in, because maybe like you were saying, like you don't want to have any buts. Like you don't want someone to be like, oh, but that beer line was long. But when they come back the next time and they see that, whatever it is that maybe they had a butt about, it's not there anymore. They're going to be like, oh, wow, these guys really want us to have a good time. They want to put on a good show because they're clearly making this like a fan-friendly event for sure. And how many people, again, does the Shriners hold? Is it like up to 2,200 or something like that?
No, so we've had more than that on our recent shows. So yeah, the venue could hold, I want to say it's like 4,500.
Oh, wow.
If we set it up, we max it out. But we don't set it up for that because we're not going to do 4,500 seats.
Yeah.
4,500 people. So we have the locker rooms, like we have that back of the house be a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Than we would if we were gonna sell more. The way that we have it configured, we could do somewhere in the range of like 3,300.
Cool.
But that would be like every single seat taken, and that's one thing that for people who haven't been to our show, we don't do standing room tickets. There are some venues that do standing room. Our worst seats are still seats.
Yeah.
And the venue's great, just the way that it's set up with, it's a pretty narrow venue. So even if you're in the furthest section from the cage in the last row.
Yeah, you got a great seat still.
it would be the equivalent to being like, if you were at a Bruins game or something, you'd be like 20 rows up from the
yeah.
kind of in the corner. That's our shittiest seat. Like it's nobody's far from the cage. It's the best venue in combat sports. So it's fantastic. There's not a bad seat in the place.
It's got such a good vibe too, because it's small. It's compact compared to like if you're going to the Garden, obviously, or something like that. That's really big, but it just fills in really nicely, and it feels like when you're in there, it's a big, no matter what it is, it's like a big event in a smaller space. It's really cool. When I was a kid, I used to go to, I think I went to like a rodeo there a couple of times, and I went to a bunch of circus events and stuff like that. It's cool. I like the Shriners.
Yeah, they do, what's it called? Roller derby.
Oh, they do roller derby?
Yeah, they still do roller derby there. Like, so they do all kinds of stuff. And, it's the thing that I really like about it. I went to MMA shows, like I've been going to local MMA since probably 2003, 2004-ish. There were some venues that, like, some of them were like nightclubs, or we've done some at like the Worcester Palladium, and
Palladium's
like,
cool.
yeah, there's so many that are like where there's standing room and like, and it's like, I don't know, for someone that's, I'm 42, like I don't want people to fucking touch me.
Yeah.
Like I'm not at the, like I can't be like squished in and like trying to like weasel through people. Like I want to be able to sit down.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to watch a fight. And I think that's one thing that our venue does really well, is like, everybody gets a seat. It's similar to going to the garden, right? I mean, the garden's obviously way bigger.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting in your chair at the garden, even if you stand up, like you don't have people that are like, you're not like climbing over people trying to see, our entire venue is set up in that same, like,
a good stadium seating. Yeah, it's
in
good.
the row in front of you. So if you sit in your seat, you can see fine. If people stand up, like, you can still see, right? So that's one thing that I think helps with the viewing experience of our show, and I think that's part of what helps us get in some of that older crowd as well.
Yeah.
Because like at other venues, like my parents have gone to other fights, like there'd be promoters I was helping out with in the past, and my parents, like, they'll go check out fights every now and then, and they just be like, I'm not going back there. That sucked. Like,
just curious, when you did a show at the Palladium, where did you guys put the cage? Was it a cage or was it a ring?
At the time, it was a ring, and that wasn't a show I did with Joe. That was a different promoter. Yeah. And yeah, they put the ring up on the stage.
On the stage. Oh man, I used to go. I took my my little nephew to see Steel Panther there a couple months ago. He's young, he's 12, but he's in like 80s metal band. He plays guitar, like that's his thing. He loves 80s metal. So we saw them. But I used to see, like, I've seen Seven Dust there, Mudvayne, like all these like Kill Switch Engage. Like Palladium used to be my favorite place to go to. I something about it. It's got that old vibe to it. It's a cool spot.
Cool, shitty venue.
Yeah, I can't imagine a fight there, but maybe with a ring. A cage would probably be kind of hard.
Yeah, it would be tough. I mean, it's been years since someone did it there, but even like, I mean, there were shows that, I mean, I don't know if you remember the Avalon in downtown Boston.
Oh my God, yeah, the Axis and the Avalon, yeah.
Yeah, they put a cage on the floor at the Avalon.
Oh wow!
And like they'd walk out from the stage. There was like a little ramp, and but that's, again, everybody's standing up. Like, you pay for a ticket to get in. Like, there's no good seats.
Yeah.
Like, there's a small amount of seats like right around the cage, but for the most part, everybody's standing up, and it's just like, and you're trying to find a way to see, and it's
if you got a big dude in front of you, it sucks.
I mean, and that's a cool vibe if you're like, if you're a young person who enjoys nightclubs.
Yeah.
Or like, and you don't mind having people hang, like all over you, yeah, it has a feel of like, like, I don't know, like it feels like something out of a movie, it feels like you're watching Bloodsport,
Yeah.
like it's like there, so there's, but again, if you're trying to get in, like, in order for us to pack the place, we need every demographic, like we can't have a venue that older people don't want to go to, so we have to find a way to make it good for everybody. Mm-hmm. And it's, again, we're trying, and I think that's the biggest key to success, is trying real hard, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, I could talk about the business side of it all night. That's going to bore the shit out of everybody. So.
No, it's so interesting, and I think it's important, one, for people to understand that it's more than just, we got a bunch of people that are going to go smash each other in a cage, because that's part of it, right? That's like, I guess, like, maybe the part of it, but none of that happens if you guys don't do what you do. If you guys don't get say, like you said, maybe like the first show, or like, the lowest one you've had since you guys get back, 1,500 people, still a lot of people. If you don't get those 1,500 people together, then you probably don't get 1,700 for the next one, which means you don't get 21,500 the next one. It's just, so hard. People sometimes like take that kind of stuff for granted.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It really is. It's something that we obsess about for months, and we spend months trying to figure out how to get more people to the venue, and we've got a lot of interesting things that we're trying to do, and the big thing that we're doing, that, again, if we're talking about the buckets that I mentioned earlier, going after like trying to find ways to get people who don't have a connection to any specific fighter and have never been to a local MMA show. Yeah. Like, finding a way to get them into our venue. They're the hardest people to get in, but it's the only way we're gonna continue to grow it, and we want to get to the point where, we want 2,500 tickets to be our floor.
Yeah.
Like we want to make like instead of trying to figure out, okay, how do we do, okay, if we know that we're gonna get 2,000 people, but we're trying to figure out how to get to 25. Well, if we can all of a sudden move our floor up a little bit, and 25 is the floor, and we're trying to figure out how to get 3,000.
Yeah.
That's a meaningful difference, and it's makes for more exciting fights. Allows us to make a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Which that's always good too, because we end up, if we're struggling and not making any money, we can't pay much. But as we start to make more money, it certainly, we're paying people more on this show than we did on our first show, and yeah.
And then again, snowball effect, right? If that doesn't happen, then you don't get higher quality fighters, or you don't get people that want to, play your show or at your venue. So all that's vital. And so it's the same thing with comics. If I can't sell tickets, and like say maybe I reached out and I got like a somewhat of a higher name comic to come out, and then it's like I sold 2 tickets and they don't want to come back, and they tell all their other friends that this guy's show sucks.
Yeah, those guys suck. We don't want to go there.
Yeah. Do you so when you're setting up a match between, a fight with 2 guys, how long would you say on average it takes to come to terms? For one that does come to terms anyway. I'm sure that you have some that, don't come to fruition for whatever reason, but how much time do you put into making a fight between 2 guys?
That's a tough question to answer, because I would say if it's a fight that, I'll run through our title fights real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Jan Oliveira and Ali Zebian. I reached out to both guys. That was a fight that I thought could make sense. So I said to both guys, I said, what do you think about Jan? What do you think about Zebian? And they both pretty quickly got back to me and said, I talked to my coaches about it. We think it's a fight that makes sense. And then in terms of negotiating purse, Jan is runs a very successful construction company. So he doesn't negotiate with us at all. Yeah. He's just like, just be fair and don't treat me like an asshole. Okay. And that's pretty much it. So as soon as Jan says that's the fight I want, we're never going to fight with Jan about money. We treat him fair, and he's, he's not going to gripe over, a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. So, that fight was done, and with Ali, we went back and forth a little bit, but that fight was probably, from the moment I offered it, I think I probably wrapped it up the next day, and it was I do 90% of it via text message.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like to talk to people. I sell software for a living, so talking to people is what I do. But it's just easier for me when I'm, if we're going to end up at 14 or 15 fights, I probably have to set up 22 or 23.
Yeah.
And we lose fights all throughout, and and some guys, when I say 23, it might not be 23 like independent fights. That might be one guy who has 2 or 3 different opponents because guys keep pulling out on. So, but either way, my point is I don't want to be taking notes, so when I do it via text message, I have it forever. I have text messages, I don't delete anything. So if I'm trying to, remember, what is it that we negotiated? I'd rather have it via text. So that's why I do most of it there. I probably sent handful of text messages, and that one got accepted. The Nate Garib and Don Shanis fight, that was probably, I set that fight up in a matter of minutes.
Nice.
It was, that's a fight that both of these guys have wanted at various times. And it's a massive fight, right? This is a fight that when, there's an old video that I can't remember who posted it first. It was either Nate or Don, but it was an interview that Nate did when he was probably 5-1, you know, and I think he's had 5 or 6 fights since then, right? And he was talking about then, you know, like Don was a champion in another promotion, and it was, hey, come fight me over here for the belt over here. And it was like he said something about, he called Don a big fish in a small pond, something like that. Like, hey, come fight in the big leagues. It was like some comment like that. So they've been kind of taking jabs at each other for a little while, and I would say they're both very unique personalities. Like they're both very much alpha personalities for different reasons, and they both are 100% sure that they're going to dominate this fight.
Yeah. What weight is it at?
That's at 145.
Okay, so it's for the 145 strap.
Yep. Yeah. And
nice.
so, and ultimately, the fight didn't happen years ago because Don went to the UFC. He had an opportunity to fight in the UFC, and and now the timing made sense for both guys. So I mean, as soon as I offered it to Nate, I reached out to them and I said, hey, what do you guys think? And he's been close, right? He's had short notice offers to fight in the UFC, and he's, I know he's trying to get on the season of The Ultimate Fighter, and it was like, is he going to take a risky fight while he's potentially right there and maybe can get in without it? I wasn't sure, but as soon as I said Don Shanis, they were like, yeah, if you can get that fight, we want it.
Nice.
And I reached out to Don's coach about it, and I sent him one text message saying, what do you think about Nate Garib for the 145-pound title? And they responded with, yes, we want it, book it. So, I mean, I think from the moment that I first reached out to either one of them, within 30 minutes it was done. And that was me waiting for a return text message.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that fight took almost no time at all. Same thing with John Duma and Mateus Silva. That was something that, Mateus is actually, he's a teammate of Jan. And, Jan's fighting for the 170-pound title. And Jan was, he had asked me, he's like, hey, we really like that Duma fight. What do you think about putting Mateus in for a title fight? And, he's got a very similar record to Duma's, very similar experience. And, there was another guy that I don't want to say leaning towards, but there was another guy that we were talking to that could have made sense. I don't talk about fights that I didn't make, because I don't want people to speculate as to what happened and whatnot. So I'm not going to even get into it. But, there was another, I wasn't sure which way we were going to go with it. And then, I reached out to Duma, and I reached out to his manager, and I said, what do you think about Mateus? And, they came back. I think the text message I typically get from Tyson is, yeah, like a pretty quick YA, yeah, all right. So we're good then there. And, it wasn't a difficult negotiation with either of them. I mean, the ones that are harder for me to negotiate are when it's guys from out of state and guys who haven't fought for us before, or guys who haven't fought in New England before. Because in Massachusetts, they require medicals that aren't typically required in other states.
Oh, okay.
CT scan, for example. And depending on what guys have for insurance, or if their doctor's willing to even give them a referral for it, paying out of pocket can be a pain. Depending on what state you're in, it might be $600.
I was going to say, does the CT scan have to be in state, or it can come from out of state?
You can get it done anywhere. You can get it done anywhere, and they're good for 5 years.
Okay.
So if you're going to fight often, then yeah, it's not a big deal to get a CT scan. But there's a lot of guys that are like, hey, the states I fight in don't require it. So they'll be, if it's a guy that I think, I'm willing to pay you $1,000 to show, another $1,000 to win. So $2,000 total if you win, $1,000 if you lose. If they're like, all right, well, a CT scan is going to cost me $650.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need $1,650. I'm going to need you guys to pay for that scan. And that's not realistic, right? It's not your scan. It's the commission scan. Yeah. Right. It's not like I get to keep it. and like reuse it somewhere else. Like it's the fighter scam. Like you're going to get to use this in other states or for other promoters or for on our show in the future. So it's like we can't pay for your medicals. So that's where things get a little crazy. And when we lose fights, and I'm sure I'm going to lose a dozen fights. I mean, I can't say a dozen. I'll probably lose 5 or 6 fights in the next 7 to 10 days, because this is when all the medicals are due, and this is when like people start realizing, oh shit, I never scheduled my appointments, and now I can't get one, or oh, I didn't realize the medicals were that much.
Yeah.
It's crazy that's why we lose all these fights. But there's so many people that just, no matter how many times I say it, I email it, I text it, and no matter how many times we do that, they just assume that it's going to be easy and it's going to be cheap, and then all of a sudden they're 2.5 weeks before the event on the schedule of medicals, and they're like, oh, it's a 30-day wait for a CT scan. And it's like, well, no shit. That's why
I've been telling you about it.
Right. So yeah, the out-of-state guys who don't fight here often and aren't used to how things are done here, those are the ones that are typically harder negotiations. Or also guys that have been on, like if it's someone that's fought in the UFC before, or someone that's fought in other big promotions, they think that's going to translate to bigger dollars.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a kid that I was talking to who was on Power Slap, and he had some clips that were very popular, right? And it was like he seemed surprised when we offered him what we offered him.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm like super popular though.
Yeah.
It's no, your
Power Slap clips are popular.
well, your clips were popular, but if you look at like your own personal Instagram, you're not that popular.
Yeah.
So if and all people have to do is click the button to follow, right? Like they can see in the description who you are, and so if they're not even if it's not even translating to a follow for you, it's definitely not going to translate into a ticket sale for me.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been things like that where, guys have thought that some other experience they had, guys that, maybe they have a big grappling background, like, oh, I'm a world champion jiu-jitsu guy. I feel like I should be worth X. And it's, well again, it has to translate to something on our side, right? Like if it's not going to be something that the UFC is excited about and really happy that we booked for UFC Fight Pass, and it's not going to lead to ticket sales, and it like there has to be some potential payoff, because there's a lot of guys who have done something cool. I mean, we had a guy on our show. We had Beksad Abdurakhmanov on our show, and he won a bronze medal in the last Olympics for wrestling. Right?
Yeah.
And he was 6-0 in MMA before fighting on our show. Right. And he was stopping everybody years ago. He hasn't fought in 8 years, give or take. And this is a guy that, I don't know if, I'm not sure if you're into collegiate wrestling, but, Jordan Burroughs is kind of viewed as like the best American wrestler right now.
He tech-falled him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Beksad tech-falled him at the Brazil Olympics.
Yeah.
Right. So he's as big of a deal as it gets in that type of sport. He won a bronze in the last Olympics. And he was like the athlete of the year in Uzbekistan, right? Like he's like got pictures with the president and shit. And if booking that guy doesn't lead to a huge amount of views or a bunch of ticket sales, it's when someone else comes out and says, oh, I was a Division I All-American in college, so I shouldn't be fighting for X amount of dollars for my pro debut. It's like, well, I mean, and that's not to say, I'm not saying that like nobody cared when Beksad fought. Like we got a decent little pop from it, but it wasn't like it was enough to show us that like someone being a world champion jiu-jitsu guy like
isn't enough.
Like but that's not something that gets picked up by this massive jiu-jitsu community, and all of a sudden 1,000 people are at a show.
Yeah.
Like I'd be shocked if an extra 20 people show up who aren't like tied to you in some way.
Yeah.
You know, like they're just going to read about it online that there's this, you know, like world-class wrestler or, you know, world-class boxer. Like it's, you know, if you can find a really popular guy, yeah. But if it's just, you know, someone who's done something special in another sport, like it just doesn't, it's tough to get it to translate.
But you guys
You
have
know,
also helped build popularity with some of your fighters too. Like you guys have had fighters go on to fight on Contender Series and
Yeah.
Tough and stuff like that. So I mean, that's got to feel good too. Like knowing that you have that relationship with fighters where they're, you know, it's a mutual relationship. Like you're getting ticket sales, you're you know, getting good fights out of these guys, and they're moving up. You know, they're taking it to the next level.
Yeah, yeah, it's always cool when that happens, you know, and that's something that we always like we're always really happy for guys when they get an opportunity, even if that means that they have to pull out of our show.
Yeah.
You know, like we had like Rico DeShulo headlined our first event, and he was supposed to fight for our title against Pompos Gregorio, and he pulled out probably 2.5 weeks before the show because he was on The Ultimate Fighter. But like we're over the moon happy for the guy because if you can get onto something like that, like if you can get into the UFC and ultimately Gregorio won the belt over someone else and he went on Contender, got a big knockout and is in the UFC now.
Right.
If he stays in the UFC for a minute, you know, like if he loses 2 fights and gets cut, then, you know, that still ultimately will help him. But, you know, he'll make money while he's there. But if all of a sudden this kicks off a UFC career that, you know, that lasts a meaningful amount of time, like all of a sudden the kid's life's different.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not like, even if you're doing well on the local level, like you're not making a shitload of money. You know, like it's like a cool side gig.
Yeah.
You know, like you can make a little bit of extra money, and there are some guys that do it real well with like ticket sales and sponsorships, and you know, and they might do it really well and make 10 or 15 grand every time they fight. So yeah, if you come out and fight 3 times a year, yeah, you can make 30 or 40 grand in extra cash, right? So if you're doing that, that's phenomenal. But if you're in the UFC, like, you know, you might make 300
Yeah.
in a, you know, like depending on how well things go. And it could be even more than that. Like if you end up being a world champion, obviously you could be, you know, multimillionaire. But you get the idea. If you're a guy that's just in the UFC for a while and, you know, doesn't crack the top 10 but hangs around a while, like you can still make good money. And it's so we realize that it's like, yes, we love to have these guys fight for us, but like this is a life-changing thing for them when they get, you know, if they get on Contender Series or if they get on The Ultimate Fighter or they get a short notice fight in the UFC, like this could be a life-changing thing for them, and we're always happy. You know, like I'm not gonna worry about the fight that we lost that's gonna impact us, you know, potentially impact us negatively for one show.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not gonna impact my life negatively as much as it's gonna impact somebody else's life positively when they get in, right? So it's always, you know, we're always really happy for guys when they get in, and it's really cool to see, you know, like especially like, you know, Gregorio got in last year, and he was a guy that was having a tough time getting fights locally, and you know, and it's not that like people are scared to fight. It's like it's tough out there, man. Like there's not a lot of fights that are, or not a lot of shows that are focused on pro fights, and unless you're selling tickets, you know, unless they have another reason to book you, it's really hard for some of these guys to stay as active as they want to stay. So, you know, it's really cool to, you know, it was cool to see him go from, you know, like he was reaching out to matchmakers like, hey, I'm dying to fight. Like, can you get me a fight? Can you get me a fight? Can you get me a fight? And that's how I ended up getting in touch with him from, you know, a buddy said, hey, this guy reached out asking if I knew anyone that was booking fights. So it was cool to see him going from like kind of chasing his dream and trying to do anything to get there to getting a win on our show and then getting a big knockout on Contender, and now he's got a fight in the UFC in a couple of months. Like, you know, it's really cool to see it kind of turn around for those guys. You know, it's cool to see it.
Have you ever ran into a situation where you know, because you're, like you said, you're booking X amount of fights because you know a bunch are going to fall through. Have you ever like booked a ton of fights and they just accident whatever reason didn't all fall through and you're like, I got too many
No.
fights?
Nope.
Never.
Never. Nope. Never once. And you know, it would be a good problem to have because I don't book fights that I don't want.
Yeah.
You know, like every fight I book, there's a reason why I'm booking it. You know, and it could be many different reasons, but it's always a positive thing if they stay together. You know, there's no fights on my card that I'm looking at right now and thinking, man, if it would be awesome if so and so would just pull out because I really want to cut this fight.
Yeah.
Ideally, I want to be somewhere in like I think 14 is the right number.
And what is it?
If
Five of them are on Fight Pass?
Usually 6.
6.
You know, I think we've squeezed a 7th on. You know, and we could like we've also done something on the UFC Fight Pass Facebook.
Cool.
So, you know, and they get, you know, they've got a massive following. So we've done
Yeah.
like a similar to what the UFC does before pay-per-view, right? They'll put some fights on ESPN that are just like buy the pay-per-view, buy the pay-per-view, buy the pay-per-view, right? So we do the same thing on the UFC Fight Pass Facebook. We'll do an hour-long show with a couple fights those guys get viewed probably more than the guys on Fight Pass,
Yeah.
right? Because everybody access to Facebook. Not behind a paywall, and it's, hey, tune in on Fight Pass, tune in on Fight Pass. You know, so we've done, you know, a couple fights on that. Like there have been times that we've done, you know, 9 fights between the two platforms. But yeah, we like to be, I mean, 13 to 15, I would say, because if fights go quickly, like 9 fights can go so fast. You know,
Yeah.
like if fights are ending in the first round, if you're talking walkouts and, you know, post-fight interviews and like if fights are ending in the first round, like you might get through 6 or 7 fights in an hour if it's ending early, right?
Yeah.
So if you've only got 9 fights, you know, if people are paying good money, like if someone's buying, you know, like the tables that we have cage side, they're $1,000 a piece or $1,250 for the ones up front, right? So if you're spending $125 for a night of entertainment and the fights are over in 90 minutes, you know, first fight's at 7:30, we're kicking you out of the venue at 8:30. You're like, what the fuck just happened? You know, like you got ripped off no matter how fun it was. So, you know, and obviously, you know, not every fight's gonna end in the first round. Like hopefully but it could happen.
Yeah.
You know, and some of our best fights have ended in the first round. Like our title fight from our last show, our main event. It was a whole lot of fun. You know, both guys had the other guy badly hurt. I think the fight ended in about 4 minutes, and it was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Nobody felt like they got ripped off, you know, in terms of the fan viewership. Like it was an awesome 4 minutes of action. But again, if every fight goes like that and you're done in an hour and a half, that sucks.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've had it go the other way too, though, where we'll have, you know, 13 fights and then a whole bunch of them are going the distance. You know, like I remember there was one show where it was like after midnight when the main events walk into the cage and, you know, and I just remember like talking to the people next to me and I was like, you know, I just want this one to end in the first round.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want anybody to
Take
get
a
hurt,
vote.
but like it would be cool if we could get a quick finish here. Cause like, you know, we like many times we'll have fights after the main event. You know, like we'll have some that like the fights didn't go fast enough, so we end up having to push something later. And it's like, you know, when I'm looking at my watch, and it's like we're not going to get out of here till 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's not that I mind staying. And again, it's the fan viewing experience. You know, like nobody's that excited about fights. You know, if the first fight's at 6:30 and the last fight ends at 1, like nobody wants to watch that.
Yeah, it's
that
a long shift.
Yeah, like nobody wants 4.5, 5 hours of fights. You know, it's like it's just a long time to be in the venue, especially if you're fans of that fighter. You know, like that really sucks. Like if you're there, like some of these guys, they only want to see their buddy fight.
Yeah.
You know, I'm showing up because I want to see this one guy fight. If he's going to be one of the last couple fights and that fight doesn't kick off until 12:30, and you got there at 6:30 because you're not sure what time his fight is, and you're just like 6 hours later, like, where the fuck is my guy? You know? So yeah, that's like going back to the fan experience. I think 13 to 15 is the right number to have a good in-venue experience. And you know, and you got to hope for some luck there too. You know, like we don't want them all to go fast. We don't want them all to go long. You know, a good mix is great. You know,
and that's going to be just sort of added stress for you too, thinking like, I was the one that made this fight, and if it's like, if they're all going too long, it's, you gotta, you get that, like, your palms are sweaty, you're starting to be like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Why did I set this one up?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do. Like, and that's the thing, I don't have any fun like at the fights.
Yeah,
I don't have
you can't
like, we'll have, you know, 2,800 people in the venue. It's packed. I know we did well. Like, the whole time I'm just sitting cage side, or like, you know, there are in many cases I'm actually like cueing the ring announcer or something, or I'm doing shit with the show. But once the Fight Pass broadcast kicks off, our production team handles all of it. You know, Sean Wheelock will be the one cueing the ring announcer, and you know, I'll just be sitting there like I'm analyzing the fight. Like, if it's a boring fight, I'm like, it's like, I know the Fight Pass guys are gonna hate this one. You know, it's like I'm gonna have to, you know, when I talk to them in a couple weeks, they're gonna be like, "What the fuck happened there?" Like, I thought that was gonna be a great fight, and you know, or you know, if it's, you know, if I'm seeing the crowd booing, I'm like, like, you know, I stress out about absolutely all of it, and I mean, we've had some that, I mean, there were fights that I booked where I thought this is gonna be one of the best fights I've ever booked.
Yeah,
and then it kind of boring. You know, ended up being not a great fight. And there have been some other fights that I booked, and I'm like, I have no idea what to expect on this one. And it turned out to be, you know, some of the like, you know, like some of these first time amateurs, they come out and they put on the best fights I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
their time to shine, right?
Just chaos. And you know, it's like, that's the big thing that I like. I just want everybody to have a good time, and I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah.
Oh, and I would say that's something that I focus on when I'm matching guys, right? Like, if I know that there's a guy that, okay, this guy's a big puncher. You know, this is a guy that, you know, if you put him in with somebody that's not very good, he could hurt somebody. Like, so I have to, you know, I have to make sure, okay, I have to make sure I match this guy with someone that can deal with a guy like him. You know, like, I have to put this guy in with somebody that can kind of, you know, that isn't going to be caught off guard by the potential violence coming their way.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, that's the biggest thing. I want to make sure, I mean, and injuries happen, right? Like, we see guys, you know, like break hands or get cuts and things like that. But like, I never want to match fights where it's like, where you just see somebody just get the shit beat out of them, and looks like they don't belong in there with the guy they're fighting. And you know, like,
fans don't want to see it either. You know, they want to see something that's competitive and something that, you know, it makes you want to see people fight that are evenly matched up, or that, you know, maybe even have styles that sort of like mix well, but nobody wants to see someone just get their head kicked in for however long it lasts, even if it's somebody that's like too tough for their own good. But
yeah, exactly. So yeah, like, there's definitely a lot that goes into it. Like, I'm not just, you know, lining up guys who happen to weigh the same. You know, like, we put a lot of thought into it, and yeah, I mean, it's stressful. You know, like, it's stressful because we care. You know, we want it to be a really good product. So yeah, I probably put more, like, I probably stress out more than the average matchmaker does. You know.
Do you watch a lot of film on the fighters to like figure out who you think matches up well, or do you rely more on like coaches and teams?
A little of everything. You know, it's a little like, a lot of the guys, I'll kind of know who they are, and I'll know a little bit about them. Like, if for the amateur guys, yeah, I reach out to the coaches and I want to understand, like, because when guys are taking their first amateur fight, I mean, you got to think, like, everybody had their first fight at some point.
Yeah.
Right. So some poor bastard was the first guy that fought John Jones.
Yeah.
Like, I was at that fight. It was terrible, you know? And when I say it was terrible, it was like, the guy that fought John was actually a pretty tough guy, but like you could just see that like this motherfucker is different.
Yeah.
You know, like he hit him with these crazy throws. Like, so you're just seeing this guy that's like been training a long time, tough guy, and then like he's looking up at the ceiling and seeing his feet go flying. Like,
Yeah, he's finding a JUCO All-American. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, or even like a guy like George St. Pierre. Like, he fought somebody locally at one point, you know, or Alex Pereira. Fuck fighting that guy.
I know, right?
You know what? Like I'm sure there's some fights if you know, or you know, Bo Nickel most recently. Like, look at Bo Nickel's early fights. Like, there were guys that didn't, you know, like, and again, it's easy to say now that, oh, it looks like they didn't belong in there. Like, I can't say that. I don't know who these guys were. But anytime you see a guy run somebody over and knock someone out cold in like 20 seconds, it's super impressive for the guy that won. But then you look at the guy that got knocked out, and it's always like, did he know? Like, did he know what he was getting into? Like, did he know who the fuck he was about to fight?
Bo's interesting too, because it's like he's such a talented wrestler, and he has so many like accolades wrestling, and he's just like knocking everybody out.
Right, and so that's the thing. And so I want to be clear. That wasn't a shot at the matchmaking.
Oh yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah,
I'm saying, did the guy, like? There's plenty of film on Bo Nickel. You know, you can clearly figure out who he was. But at that point, this guy probably went in thinking, "I'm going to outbox this guy."
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to outbox this guy. I'm just going to try to avoid the takedown. And then all of a sudden, they're wow, this guy can punch.
Yeah.
Right? And that was the thing with John Jones years ago. He had some amazing knockouts on the local level. Like, he was starching guys in 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Like, you know, on our show that he fought on, he knocked out Parker Porter, who was in the UFC for a long time.
Parker Porter, heavyweight. Right?
Yeah, he knocked out Parker Porter in like 30 seconds. And it was like it was amazing, right? And so you see stuff like that, and it's, you know, it's just like when you're the first guy, you know, so if it's a first time amateur, I end up talking to a lot of the coaches, and I say like, hey, can you give me some background? Like, did he wrestle in college? Does he have any other combat sports experience? Like, how good is this guy going to be? And I'm sure every coach says, well, I believe in all my guys. Okay, but is this guy different?
Yeah.
Like if I put him in with a guy, you know, if you're telling me that he's a pretty, you know, he's been training, you know, first time guy, he's been training for 18 months, like, and I match him up with another guy that's a first timer that's been training that long, and then like if this guy is your guy gonna hurt somebody? You know, so I end up asking a lot of those questions and trying to figure out, like, you know, like, especially in the amateurs, right? Because those guys don't get paid. You know, so I'm like, don't sandbag me in the amateurs, right? Like, don't tell me that the guy is, he's never had any, you know, never had any fights, first time, been training 18 months, and then the kid does an interview and was like, oh yeah, I'm 7-0 in kickboxing. It's like
what?
It's like, come on. Like, so, you know, and shit like that happens every now and then. And so, I mean, we do what we can. You know, we do as much research as we can to try to make like, I want everyone that fought for me to have a good experience with us too, because like, you don't want to have a whole bunch of guys, like, you don't want to have anybody that feels like you kind of put one over on.
Yeah. Especially
with this, like, you know, like I don't know, you could get your fucking jaw broken, you could get
dire consequences for sure.
Yeah, like I try to be as, you know, as like I'm straight with everybody on. I try to make sure to give everybody as much info as possible. But yeah, that part's stressful for me. The whole thing's stressful.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot to it, you know.
Say the day of a fight. So say doors open at, I think you said 6, right?
Yeah.
So day of a fight, kind of, could you walk us through, like, okay, you wake up, maybe you got a good night's sleep the night before, maybe you didn't, but you get up. What did your day look like the night of a fight or the day of a fight? Do you have any like rituals or anything that you like, you want to put like good voodoo out in the universe? Like anything you do that like stays consistent?
So I'm usually pretty good when I wake up on fight day, because at that point, So a big part of the show is, again, making sure everybody gets all their medicals in and gets on the scale and makes weight.
Mm-hmm.
But when I wake up on fight day, every now and then something bad happens. Like we lost our co-main event, like one of the best fights we ever booked. We lost that on fight day on our last show.
Oof.
But that's we've only lost 2 fights ever on fight day. So it's rare. So like usually like weigh-in day, like that's when like all the bad shit happens before the weigh-in or at the weigh-in. We lose fights every show at the weigh-in.
Is your weigh-in the night before the show?
Yeah, day before the show.
Yeah.
So day before the show, everybody weighs in, we face everybody off, and we know what fights we have for the next day. And on top of that, the fighters all turn their tickets in. Because a big part of how the shows get people in the door is the fighters actually sell tickets and they'll make a ticket commission on what they sell.
Yeah.
So I'll know what and that's a big piece of our revenue. So before fight day, or when I wake up on fight day, I'll know what we did for online ticket sales. We do a lot of tickets online. And I'll also know what the fighters sold. So I'll have a pretty good idea of how profitable we are because the actual walk-up, like people who buy tickets on the day of, we're talking less than $5,000 in tickets.
Yeah.
Right? So and it's usually pretty close, like give or take $1,000. I know how much we're going to get on the day of. So when I wake up, I know how profitable the show is going to be. Pretty close anyway. I might not, I won't have it to the dollar, but I'll know if it's going to be a show that we made money on or if it's going to be a show that we're getting killed on. And I'll also know what we've got for fights. So the biggest stress for me is weigh-in day. But when I wake up on fight day, there's still a lot of things we have to do. But I usually, again, weigh-in day is pretty stressful. I get there weigh-in day at probably 10 a.m. and we don't leave till 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Because the other thing we do is Joe has a lot of comp tickets. A lot of people that he gives away free tickets, or we've got sponsors that we give away tickets, or people that he's got a bunch of people. Everybody always laughs at this, but he sells tickets to people at the dog park. He goes to the dog park. So he'll have 30 people that bought tickets from him at the dog park. He'll give him a really good deal. But it'll be I'll get you guys whatever the best available ticket is. After we get some returns and so someone might be paying 50% off, right? They have a massive discount to some 60-year-old woman he knows from the dog park. But so we have to sit down and actually, once we know what we have left over for tickets, we have to go through that and figure out, okay, where are we going to put our sponsors? Where are we going to put? There's a bunch of fighters that we give free tickets to, guys that have fought for us in the past. Or guys that might have fought on the last show that aren't fighting on this one, or a fighter that sold a bunch of tickets that, he wanted us to upgrade his family. So I got to figure out, all right, where am I going to put these 6 people? So we'll have a ton of people that we have to figure out, okay, where am I going to put my parents?
Yeah.
Where am I going to put the other people that are going to go? So once we sort through all that, fight day, I get there a little bit later. I try to sleep in on fight day. I usually get to the venue around 12 o'clock. And there's not a lot of places that I can, on the way to the venue, there's not a lot of places I can stop for food. And I'm one of my things, I have no idea why this is a thing for me. If I have to drive half a mile off the road to go get food somewhere, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I have to be able to pull into the parking lot from, I need to be able to see the place.
See it.
I have to be on this road. Right, so there's 2 places right before I get on the highway and I can head down to the venue. And it's always right around lunchtime. So I either get pizza at one place, or there's a place across the street that does really good subs and roast beef sandwiches. And so I stop and get something at 11:30, 12 o'clock at one of these 2 places that are across the street from each other. And then I always think I'm going to sleep in. But there's always something that happens and kind of ruins my day. And there'll be some chaos that I'm dealing with from 9 o'clock in the morning until I leave at 12. I get my food. I take another phone call on the way down because somebody's always calling me about something. And then when I get there, on fight day, the biggest thing I have to do is like there's just a like I have to make sure everything got set up correctly. So do we have all the tables out? Are all the chairs where they need to be? Are the is everything set up from a production standpoint? Are there any more comp tickets we got to do? Is there like what are the things that we didn't get to yesterday that we have to do now? Do we have all the gloves?
Yeah.
That was something that like we had an issue. Like there's always like there's always something, right? Because we don't have a crew of people that help us with stuff. So like we have to go through and figure out is all our stuff here. Like there was one show early on where we forgot the ring cards. And when I say we, it was either Joe or Sal who was working for us at the time. So we had no ring cards.
Yeah.
So the ring girls get in the ring and they're like, round one. Yeah, they're walking around like literally like round two, like clapping like two, right? Like we had to do it all night because we had no ring cards. And there was a show, I don't know which show it was, 3 shows ago, give or take, where someone forgot a box of gloves.
Oh.
So we didn't have any double XLs and we didn't have any smalls. So we're like, send somebody to get the fucking gloves, right? So then like someone's like frantically driving and Boston traffic. Joe lives in Peabody, right? So it's going from Wilmington to Peabody on Friday night at 5 o'clock.
Stressing. Oh my God.
Yeah. So like there's always stuff like that, or like it'll be like, so we got to try to figure out early on, like, did we forget something? Like what is it that, like, what's the thing that could go wrong?
Yeah.
It's always, do we have the belts? Like, because it would look pretty stupid if we had a title fight and don't wrap a belt around somebody.
Yeah.
But all of the stuff we have, like, is our printer here so I can print off bout sheets. Like, do we have all the paperwork done? Because we have to do all kinds of paperwork with the commission. Like, they'll want to, like, mid-fight, one of the guys will grab us and say, hey, we got to go through the numbers. So, like, they'll have to go through our spreadsheet on what we sold for tickets because we have to cut them a check, like, before our night is up. We have to pay for all the judges, all the referees. So, like, someone has to go deal with that. So I have to make sure our spreadsheets are all ready so the numbers are there. And so that's a lot of what I'm doing on fight day is just, like, making sure we have all the things, making sure we have the numbers for the commission, making sure we've got everything lined up. And last time we had one of our ring girls, I can't remember exactly what happened, but like one of them, like I don't know if she just stopped responding or what, but one of the ring girls didn't show up, and one of our consistent ring girls was sick.
Oof.
And we weren't sure if she was going to make it. And then, thankfully she did. And she's great. I was pumped when she was able to make it. But again, what are we going to say? Like find a way to get here, like if you're telling us you're sick, like it's not like the ring girls make a ton of money. So like, it's like it sucked. Like, I felt bad, it's like, geez, I hope you feel better, so yeah, when she was able to make it, that was great. But like that, again, that was another thing where it's like, do we try to find a new ring girl? Like, do we just not have ring girls? Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
So it's, dealing with a lot of fire drills on fight day. And then once the fights start happening, it's usually pretty smooth.
Yeah.
Well, that's the crazy part. Like, it's getting to 6 p.m. that's the hard part. And once 6 p.m. rolls around, like, yeah, there'll be fire drills. But it'll be stuff like, I don't know. It'll be like it's always stuff like, oh, so and so, like there's supposed to be tickets at the front for so and so, and we can't find them. And it's like, all right, well, give them different tickets then. Like, we have other spots that we can put them. Like, either find their envelope. If you're telling me their envelope's not there, give them something else. Like let's make it work. We can always find a way. There's enough. Like we've had people that like they were supposed to have front row tickets, and all of a sudden they're gone. We have no and I couldn't tell, like, we don't have a list of where everybody in the venue is sitting. Yeah. So if Ron Smith's tickets aren't there, I don't know which front row seats were supposed to be his. But we can find a way to get him into 2 other front row seats. But then it's like, okay, where are they, right? Like, where can we put them? And we have seats that are normally going to be, again, it might be, hey, we normally have one of Joe's buddies that's going to sit here. Well, we got to tell him that he's going to find a seat somewhere else. Sorry, we need these 2 front row seats.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like chaos like that happens every now and then. But yeah, fight night's usually not that bad. It's of course I just fucked it all up for this one.
Yeah, right. No, I'll knock on some wood for you, my man.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. So I mean, the biggest thing, this is usually the most stressful week for me, because this is the week that I'm asking people for all their medicals and all their paperwork.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm going to lose, I would guess, 5 fights by Friday.
Yeah.
If you have to put it on.
So it's like, you know what you're in for this week. It's just a matter of like how much of it and who.
Yeah, and how much is it going to suck?
Yeah.
Right. Like if and again, there might be an injury. There might, because it's not all just like people that didn't get done their paperwork, but like if Ali Zebian breaks his fucking hand this week, like we got a big problem.
Yeah.
Like that's a tough fight to fill.
Yeah.
Like we're going to have a major problem if we lose the title fight, right? And again, it depends, right? Because we lose fights all the time, and I always, like, when it gets close, I always talk to the opponent and I say, what do you want me to do? Because if you don't want to fight like a replacement opponent, like if you're not just looking for, because again, sometimes the replacement opponents, like the guys that are willing to say yes that close, like they're usually not guys that are on your level, right? They're guys that are willing to come in and take a fight on short notice, but they're not usually, like, if it's a guy that is close to the UFC, he's not saying yes on 2 weeks notice,
yeah.
Right? So I always ask the guy, like, do you want me to find you someone to fight? Or like, because some of these guys, if I go out and find someone, they'll reluctantly say yes. And it's like, if you don't want me to find someone, just tell me and I won't. Like, we can be done with this right now, and we'll book the same fight on the next one, or I'll get you something else on the next one. Or if you're going to take a fight between now and the next one, fine. Do you? I never care if any guys want to fight on other shows. Like, but I always ask right off the bat. I'm like, what do you want to do? Do you want me to find you someone else, or would you prefer to just wait for a similar opponent in the future? And it's the tough ones are when it's guys that, when I lose opponents, Jake Pill is one of the guys that's fought for us a bunch. He's a guy that, he's an important guy for our promotion. And when he loses an opponent and we're 2 weeks out and he wants to stay on the card, that's pretty stressful, because I can find somebody, I got to make that happen. And anytime it's a guy that we've really wanted, like it's less stressful. Like if and the guys from out of state are going to hate to hear this, but I'm sure they know the deal. Like if one of the local guys gets hurt, I'm not going to kill myself to find an opponent for the guy that's flying in from California. Like, sorry, like I can't fly in 2 guys for the same flight, and they know the deal. So when that happens, like it sucks to lose the fight, but it's not stressful for me because there's no action that I need to take.
Yeah.
Like there's no problem that I need to solve.
Sort of out of your hands at that point, almost,
Right, exactly. It's out of my hands. The local, like if it was the other way around and the guy in California didn't get his medicals done and the local guy needs an opponent, and like he's been posting on social media like crazy for us, he's a guy that we've been advertising, he's a guy we've been pushing, if all of a sudden he needs an opponent, that's a lot of stress for me.
Yeah.
Because I gotta make that work. So I don't stress out when, like, if we lose a fight and it's gone, like it's like, okay, that sucks, but there's nothing I can do about it. So like I've been really good at not stressing out about the things that I can't control, that like there isn't a solution for, like something I don't have to go find a solution for. I don't worry about that. So yeah, it gets to be tough when it's, when we lose something for a guy who really wants to stay on the card, that's trying to stay on for a while. So hopefully we keep these fights together.
I'm going to send you some good vibes. It's happening.
we've got enough on this one that it's. I mean, this is the best card we've ever put together.
Yeah. Now, Rick, I'm getting my producer saying I got to start wrapping up. But before we wrap up, is there maybe one fight or a couple fights that you want to plug or that you're super excited about for this coming card?
Yeah, I'll sprint through a few of them if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So we've got the 3 title fights. I already touched on those a little bit, right? And I think those guys are all doing podcasts too, so I don't need to really get into those that much. We've got 3 massive fucking title fights. It's going to be sick. On top of that, Carlos Lazoya, sick fighter. He's been fighting for Fury down in Texas, but he's up here in the Northeast. He's been up here for a while. Awesome fighter. I'm so pumped we got him. He's fighting Chris Dissanel, who fought for our title not that long ago. Another big-time fighter. Both of these guys are dogs. It's going to be a crazy fight. Can't fucking wait. And then we've got some really good prospects on the card as well. We've got Kyle Hill, who's 1-0 pro, had a really great knockout on the last fight. He was undefeated as an amateur. He's fighting Sam Watford. That's going to be an awesome fight. Romano Medina is 2-0. He's fighting a guy named Patrick Benson, who's from Seattle. And Patrick had a really good fight out here with us a few shows ago. And Romano is one of the better prospects out here at 155. 2-0. Really, really good. Can't wait to see him in there. And we also have a kid by the name of Josh Medeiros, who's 1-0 pro, fighting Adrian Haley. That's a super tough fight for Josh. Those are 3 of the more exciting prospects that, again, when I say prospects, if we're talking 1 or 2 fights, those are 3 of the guys that I've been really excited about for a long time. I'm glad we got them on this show. We also have Jerry Muse, who's, I believe, 6-0 now, fighting Damian Nelson. I don't know if you saw Jerry I don't know if you fought on the one that you were at, but the guy that came out dancing and was dressed like Captain America. And
yeah, I think I did see that one, actually.
A lot of fun. Again, he's the guy that everybody will remember. He's got his toughest fight to date. He's dropping down to a new weight class. And then we also have some guys that have fought for us a handful of times that are exciting, right? Guys like, Leo Ladera, Jay Bakanowski, Anthony Pike, Steven Stengel, Travis Demko's got a fight that we're going to be announcing in the next couple days. Jared St. Jean, we've got a bunch of guys that have had fights with us in the past that are coming back. So it's, that's going to be a really, really cool night of fights. And can't wait. It's our best card to date by far,
Yeah. And so that card is February 9th at the Shriners Auditorium. Doors open at 6. What time's the first fight kickoff?
Likely 6:30. It depends on what happens, though, right? Like if the next couple weeks go completely sideways and we end up with 12 fights, well, then we'll probably start closer to 7.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would assume we're going to end up in the 14-15 fight range, and we'll have our first fight at 6:30.
Awesome.
4-6, first fight at 6:30.
Awesome. And then, guys, if you're watching this, I want you to follow Combat FC on Instagram. Do you guys have a Facebook account too?
We do, yeah. I think it's just combatfc.tv on Facebook. Okay,
follow Combat FC on all social media. It's Rick Combat FC or Combat FC Rick? I forget.
It's Rick. I think it's Rick _Combat FC. But yeah, as long as they follow the Combat FC page.
Yeah.
I'm tagged in just about everything, so they'll be able to find me. But,
awesome. And you guys put up awesome clips too. You put up a lot of stuff on your fighters. And I just think one thing you guys do really well is tell your fighter's story and really give the people watching an idea of why those 2 guys are fighting. It's something that the UFC does probably the best. And you guys really take a page out of their book. And I enjoy watching the build up to the fights just as much as the fights themselves. So guys, give Combat FC a follow. Give Rick a follow. Rick, thank you so much for coming in and coming on and just, talking about, the fights in general and talking about the process to make them happen, because that's stuff people should hear about. And I think it really speaks to the level of production and the level of heart that you guys put into your show. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for coming on, man. This has been great.